So, what would your personal go-to mount to ride into battle as a fallen or evil aligned celestial? What would you go with?
I mean, besides a nightmare, because that's the clear right answer in D&D.
I mean, yeah, something other than that, a little outside the box. Since I asked the question, I'll lead us off. I wanted to go with the Paraton out of the Monster Manual, right? Body of a bird of prey, head of a stag. And then I realized that they're really not that big. However, Ghost of Saltmarsh gives us some monstrous Paraton.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in at CR 11. Basically the exact same thing, but massive.
Yeah, that's not nothing. You want to know what my answer is? You guys ever seen The Last Unicorn?
Oh, yeah.
I would ride a giant red fire-breathing bull into battle.
Yes.
If I was going to be an evil aligned celestial, that's what it would be.
Excellent.
When I think of an evil character, what came to my mind was the Wicked Witch of the West and all the little monkeys, and I would actually want to ride a giant winged gorilla.
Good God, that is terrifying.
Precisely.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome to another It's a Mimic episode where we continue our conversation on monsters in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me today are Brad and Tyler, and this episode is called, and this is a math joke, guys, and it's a visual one, so it doesn't translate verbally as well, but Celestials, Obtuse Angels for Calculating Sin. Just obtuse angles for calculating sin.
I literally laughed out loud to myself when I read it in the notes ahead of time prepping for this.
Tell me you're a nerd without telling me you're a nerd.
It was one of my favorites, and I went, oh, it's so much better written.
Yeah.
In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, this panel of Dungeon Masters is going to run through even more Celestials that will challenge the player's ideas of law and good. But some of these Celestials also come on flying mounts as they appear to mortals and impose their wills.
So before we get started, let's address the celestial animals that get specifically called out as mount options in the Mystic Odysseys of Theros and Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. So if we look at Theros, before I get into the stats and what these guys look like, I want to talk a bit about the lore that Theros gives us for the mounts for these Archons. Essentially, Archons come into battle on mounts. They are hand in hand. You almost never see an Archon without a mount when it's coming into battle. And I can tell you right now, it looks pretty badass. If you are a character playing in a D&D campaign, you see this thing coming at you, it would be a little scary, to say the least. But here's the interesting lore I found. In the books, it says that it's believed that the mounts are physical manifestations of the Archon's will, so that both Archon and mount can think as one. Now, if this is true, it could really be any creature that the Archon wants it to be. In Theros, it just mentions the two most common ones that we see, but really, it can be any creature, any winged creature. Heck, it can be any creature, put wings on it, if it is just a physical manifestation of their will, which is pretty insane. But let's look at the two that we see, at least that are most seen, and that are winged bulls and winged lions. Bulls, essentially what they look like, giant bulls, with two sets of horns, one's kind of jutting out and one's going down. And as for the lions, could be both female, could be either female or the male, essentially a mane or no mane. There you go.
That's not the only thing that differentiates the sexes there, Tyler. Just throwing that out.
Yes, I understand. But in the visual aspect that we see in the books, that's all it really tells.
You're just reading the wrong books.
That's a different kind of fantasy book.
But if we look at the CR, these guys, it's just a CR4. They are large creatures, so they're pretty big, but they're not like epic hierarchy type of things to go against. But if we do look at the stat block, we can see that they have insanely high strength and constitution. The dexterity is decent. It's pretty good. The wisdom is average. And the intelligence and the charisma is super low. And when I say low, the charisma, the lowest stats are 5. Now, they understand Celestial, but they cannot speak it.
Does that mean that their intelligence is above 5?
Their intelligence is 6.
So that means that they're smarter than a hill giant,
Yes.
just despite
not
their
by
lack of
much.
language, which means these things
Yeah.
are sentient. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, just keeping it all straight in my brain.
No, absolutely. I would say they're sentient, but it's not incredibly there.
Well, they're
However-
like it's like a manifestation, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
they're intelligent enough to be able to act and think and reason, but and have self-awareness. But I mean, it's not going to get into any sort of like philosophical debate with you.
Well, what I would almost say here is if they are linked as one, I would almost use the Archon's stats on it because the Archon is making the decisions for it. This is if it's separated away from the Archon.
Fair.
That's how I look at it. As for what it can do, whether it's the bull or the lion, it has either a charge or a pounce. And again, if you're choosing another creature, you can just slot these in, really. Even the stats are very minimal difference between the lion and the bull, like 1 or 2 points. And so have fun with them, change it around if you want, but give them a charge or a pounce. The bull has a gore attack, the lion a bite or a claw attack. So pretty standard. Now, if we explore a little bit of out of Theros and look at the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, we actually see another mount that I actually like these guys a lot more. They are called the Felidar, and more specifically, the Winged Felidar. The lore behind these guys is they are devoted to law and justice and the relentless pursuit of it. So they match hand in hand with Archons, which we're going to be looking at. They look pretty badass. They are aligned with 2 sets of downward pointing horns and large teeth that just protrude from their mouth. They look pretty terrifying. And they have this almost grayish, bluish tinge to their whole body. And according to the picture, it doesn't say it in the lore, but according to the picture, it's almost like a snake-like tail, and then large feathery wings.
Just to pause you for half a second there. Do you guys play Magic the Gathering at all?
No,
but I
it's
know
one
this is
thing
in
I've
it.
not been sucking into.
I have dabbled with it again recently, and the one thing that I know about Felidars is that they're typically lions, but they can be any large cat, and it's typically horns, but it can be any kind of horn or even antler, depending on your setting as well. So you can have like a wide variety of Felidars if you wanted, which
Very
is
cool.
fun. And most of them don't have wings. So a winged Felidar as a mount for an Archon, an angel, is special even in Magic the Gathering.
Mm-hmm. It does say Archons like to use the Winged Felidar, at least when we look at Ravnica. And it kind of matches the lore of Theros too. If it can be any large creature, if we're to look at Magic the Gathering, it kind of goes along the same lore in that regards to that.
Can you imagine the onslaught of like 400 of these things flying down, like blotting out the sun, and then there's that one guy on a winged giant toad just like bringing up the rear?
Why not get a little more creative with it?
That would be funny. This is the onslaught of the Archons, and then there's the one lagging behind. Wait for me.
There's the Archon of the swamp.
So, in comparison to the mounts we saw in Theros, these guys, the Winged Felidar, are a CR5, so a little bit more beefy, and we're going to see this why, because they have crazy high strength and con, like the previous mounts. Their dexterity, constitution, and wisdom are very decent, 16s and 17s. The lowest stat is intelligence at 10, and the highest stat is charisma at 20. Major difference from the previous mounts. This thing actually, it is, both creatures are sentient, but this one has a mind of its own.
Yeah, this one is as intelligent as the average person and as charismatic as the average It's a Mimic host.
Depends on the host.
Not including Dave.
What I love about this is I wonder if you can sway a Winged Felidar. If it is kind of bonded to its current Archon, and if the Archon starts to waver in what it believes, can you sway this Felidar? It's not a physical manifestation of the Archon. It has its own mind. It can think for itself. It damn well can. Can you convince it of something otherwise?
Well, I want to say this too. Like, this is because it's a different setting, right? We've come from Theros to Ravnica. this one is not so much like this mount for the Archon. I'm covering the Archon that rides this thing in a little bit here. But to jump ahead, this thing is its own creature. It does its own thing. But at any point, as long as it's on the same plane of existence as its Archon, the Archon can teleport onto its back and start riding immediately. So from anywhere in the plane, which means that as far away as they can get, it can just like send this Archon off as a guardian or as some eyes, something to help the party for a little while. And if the party gets totally screwed, the Archon can teleport in instantaneously and just start wrecking house. So
and while not necessarily in the nature of an Archon, it can do the opposite as well, right? Leave this thing behind somewhere in a safe spot, go into a really sketchy situation. If it needs an out, boom, it's there.
Absolutely. Then the crazy thing about it is this Archon is not the mount is not an aspect of the Archon. The Felidar is its own creature in Ravnica. So whereas the other ones, the winged bull and the winged lion, are part of the Archon, this one
They're
is
a manifestation of the Archon.
Yeah, this one is not. This one is its own
creature.
Yeah, that they just have a strong bond with. And it says they can sometimes be considered a single being acting with a single mind. However, it is its own separate being, right?
Exactly. And you actually have this in the stat block called bonding. What I like the thing that you're talking about, how it can teleport onto its back, but even if it's 100 feet, it can still talk with each other via telepathy. So it can be. I love that idea. But also, it can choose to either hear or see what each other is seeing. They just negate their own. It's kind of like they go into a trance and suddenly see what the other one is seeing.
Is that in Theros?
That's in Ravnica. That's for the Felidar.
Oh, well, goddamn. I was looking at the Archon. It didn't even occur to me to look at I'm like, whatever. It's a flying lion.
Oh, gosh. No, it's a lot more than that.
It really is, isn't it?
This thing is, I would say a C or a 5 is a little low in consideration to if you're to compare between the two.
The stat block alone you're dealing with 19s, 20s in the stat block.
Yeah,
it's because it's not meant to be a combatant.
No, it's not.
It is a flavor. Now, one thing it does have keen hearing, which again, advantage on perception checks with hearing. It has the pounce ability where you can, if you're going from 20 feet before, they can jump DC 15, knocked prone, and a multi-attack of a bite and claw, which is pretty standard.
It's got keen sight as well, so it has advantage on that.
Yeah. I just really love the flavor this brings. I feel it brings a lot more flavor than just the winged lion or the winged bull. I wish they'd like meld the two together, or just use a winged Felidar and make it a different creature, not always a lion. I want to use just the winged Felidar for this thing's riding. But yeah, that's what you got for the different mounts for the Archon.
All right. Well, should we bring one more mount to the table then?
Why?
Why? I'll tell you why. Because it's one of the most iconic mounts in pretty much all of fantasy. We're going to talk about the Pegasus.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about. I thought you were going to talk about Dave in a ball gag.
Wow, that's only certain people's fantasy.
Now, is that with or without Dan's furniture?
Always with. So Pegasus. Everyone probably knows what these things are, but let's talk about them in D&D terms. White horse, wings of a bird, all white. These things. It's kind of what people picture as a unicorn, but no horn, add wings. So completely different.
So if it ever gets dirty, does it like shed it off and turn white, stark white again?
I don't think it can get dirty.
I would have that it's always pristine. If it dove into mud, it would fly out of it and the mud would just
wick right off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like water off a duck's back.
That saves a lot of cost.
Right. The description of these things they are the vision of gracious majesty, right? When they touch down, and they almost never touch down, they linger only for a moment, is what the lore says, right? These things drink only sparkling water, basically. The most pristine lakes and rivers, fresh spring water, they do not touch anything else. They are incredibly timid, which is really interesting. If you hadn't have read the notes for this, that's not necessarily the first thing that may come to mind. But as far as D&D is concerned, these are timid creatures, but they are incredibly wise and intelligent creatures. They are generally sought as very swift and reliable steeds. They're faster than, say, a griffin or something of that type. Maybe wyverns, hippogriffs, things like that. They pale in comparison with speed in the lore, anyways. Stat-wise, it's pretty close. However, they are as intelligent as humanoids, so they can't technically be broken and tamed like a horse. While they have horse-like features, they are not horses. These things are intelligent. They make their own choices, and they will serve not any, but they will only serve good aligned creatures. However, to try and convince one of these to actually be your mount, you have to have a pretty good cause. That said, they are incredibly loyal. So they mate for life, but they also serve whoever they bond to for life. So if they become your mount, if you can convince them that you are worthy of being carried on their back, they will serve you for the rest of their life or your life, whichever is first. That's kind of the main takeaways here as far as the lore of these things. Interestingly, if you look at the Forgotten Realms wiki, there's some information there about Pegasi eggs being incredibly valuable. However, Pegasi give live birth according to all other sources that I can find.
Eggs, you say? That's craziness.
Yeah. Pegasi eggs. Like, I don't know where this came from, where this source is.
I don't know if I want to imagine that.
Right? I don't know if this is an old edition, because current edition says that they give live birth. So clearly that's not a thing.
Can I just say, this I think is also the first time that I've heard any sort of lore about a celestial propagating.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Well, yeah. Because they aren't beasts. They are in fact celestials, right? So they're just mounts of celestials. They themselves are celestial.
I'm assuming that there's gonna be lore on unicorns. Like unicorn babies, baby unicorns.
Yeah, there must be.
But God, I've seen enough freaking art over the years of like little full unicorns that are just super cute and like bouncing around. But yeah, it's wild to me that these guys are considered to be timid. And I wonder if that's just to push forward the narrative that they're hard to tame. Like you've got to put a lot of effort into catching one and taming it in order to get one.
Yeah, I think you could almost call it fleetful even more than timid, right? They aren't really interested in others, right? They're very much in their own world, and to come out and seek one out would probably be a big deal. They don't tend to just wander the realm, right? Or the planes. They tend to stick to their own places and their own company. Quick blast through the stat block here. We're looking at only a CR2 for these things. They aren't really powerful. But again, these are, if you're bringing in Pegasi, you're bringing them in for the lore more than the combat. Your paladin wants a mount, make them prove that they are worth it. These things only big time. These things only have an AC of 12, average of 59 hit points, 90-foot fly speed, 60 feet on the ground.
That's fast.
That's fast.
So fast.
Yeah. So be careful giving your player one of these, because giving your player a 90-foot fly speed mount, you're going to have to account for that.
180-foot dash. That's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely nuts. In the air.
I actually have a character in our campaign who has a Pegasus. What's the spell cost where they can summon a beast?
Find steed.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's a celestial. Like it's a magical representation of a beast. I'm trying to remember what it's called. The spell. It's not summon beast. It's.
Well, there's summon celestial.
The summon celestial. There's find steed and find greater steed. It's not either of those.
No, it's the one where he actually summons a magical beast. Like it's corporeal, but it's like made of magic. I'm trying to remember what the spell is.
That just sounds like steeds and familiars, right? Like,
yeah, it's not conjure celestial or summon celestial.
No, it's not. I'm gonna look it up because I can't remember it now. But he used it to conjure a Pegasus that he has used for like the latter half of the campaign. And sometimes I'm just like, why Reginald? Why did you have to bring Reginald into this? That's what he calls him.
Excellent.
So I looked that up. Keep going.
All right, you look that up. We'll keep going here. This thing has pretty beefy stats for something that's CR2. We're looking at strength at 18. We're looking at con at 16, wisdom at 15, and everything else is high as well. The lowest stat is int at 10. So it's as smart as your average commoner, as we've discussed with our Felidar. They're incredibly perceptive. It's the one thing that they are capable of actually rolling on +6. And they speak and, well, you know what's interesting here? Oh, sorry. Understands. There we go. I misread it. Understands Celestial, Common, Elvish, and Sylvan, but cannot speak. So again, they'll understand commands in any of those languages, but they can't respond back. As far as combat goes, the only attack they have is with their hooves, +6 to hit, and doing 2d6 +4 bludgeoning damage. So again, these things are not built for combat. They are not meant to be you're not supposed to go in and fight a bunch of these. I mean, your evil characters might just want to go and wipe these things out, and they won't have an especially hard time with it. However, they are intelligent. They aren't going to be taken by surprise, and they're probably going to flee at the first sign of conflict. So if you're seeking these out, it's for a social encounter, and most likely your paladin wants one.
I'm telling you, Tyler, I'm looking at it. It's Find Steed or Find Greater Steed. Like those are the spells that do exactly what you're talking about. You can summon Celestial, you can conjure Celestial, but I don't know if your player has access to 7th level conjuration magics. But Find Steed and Summon Steed, they're not beasts. It actually summons a magical creature.
Yeah, so
it's Find Greater Steed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that would be it.
I'm looking at a stat sheet on D&D Beyond.
There you go. I gotta say, I really like the Pegasus. I'm a little annoyed because depending on your lore, this is another one of these creatures like Medusa, who we have an entire creature named after Pegasus in Greek lore is the Pegasus. It's the one. It's his name, right? Whereas we have just any Pegasus, and more than Medusas in pop culture. Pegasi, I guess, tend to be just plural now. But
yeah,
Pegasus.
Yeah. Peg. No, I'm not. I'm going to stop before I get myself in trouble. Yeah. Okay, I got a couple questions for you before we go any further. Before we launch into the actual Archons of this episode, let's roll dice.
That's a nat 20 for me.
I got a 5.
I got a 6.
All right. Round failed me. I want to look at kind of the idea of celestial mounts in general, not any specific one, but feel free to hone in on one. Just in general, when it comes to mounts that are summoned, that are celestial creatures, how do you roleplay one of these? If you don't have an Archon there, it's just the mount and the parties interacting with it, because they all understand. They all can communicate. They just can't speak. So, Brad, you were up first.
Yeah. So the not being able to speak is a really interesting one, right? They can understand what you were trying to say. I feel like these creatures should also understand. They're all intelligent enough. They're all wise enough to understand the desires of the Archon, of their, I want to put in quotations, their master, for lack of a better word, right? So they will be serving the interests of their Archon. They will be basically a wordless, in the same way that you would play almost a wordless servant who just does the bidding of their master. That is kind of how I would play these things, right? They will interact as well as they can. They may provide assistance. They may provide guidance.
Some of them clearly have more, independent will than others.
Yes, they do.
Whether or not they've been an aspect of their
will based on just the lore of these as well, their will is likely to align with that of their masters because they choose to bond with this person. So unless that person has really changed who they are since the bonding process, they're likely to want to serve the will of the master because the two wills are likely aligned.
But I like the idea that it's possible to a person's alignment can change. And so
yes, absolutely.
I like the idea of,
I think in the case of these creatures, their alignment isn't likely to change. It's more likely the Archon, if anything, is going to be the one who changes.
Exactly.
So if there's going to be a conflict between the two, it will probably be there. Interestingly, I think the first thing one of your players is going to do if they have access to the spell is they're going to try and speak with animals. These are not animals. These are celestials. So they're going to try to cast a spell. You're going to allow them to cast it, and it's weirdly not going to work, and you're going to wonder what the hell's going on. And they might even get a little ticked at you.
Well, one of my ways around that is whenever I have an intelligent creature like this that is smart enough, I do this with familiars all the time, smart enough, can't speak out loud, is I give them some basic personification. I'll allow them to sigh and shake their head or roll their eyes or laugh at a joke to give you the immediate impression that they understand this creature thinks. Even the ones that had the 6 intelligence, I mean, smarter than a hill giant, and the hill giant knows when to laugh at a fart joke, right? These things will still have enough personality to interact even with that low charisma score to be able to show that they are not just a squirrel.
Yeah, they're not just a dumb beast.
Yeah.
Like the beasts of Narnia in a sense, right? When they weren't dumb beasts.
Exactly, yeah. They're the ability to think, they are sentient. And I like the idea for role-playing these guys, almost the point if, depending on what they are, either seeking someone out to help them in their own cause. For example, like the Felidar, they seek this justice. And this is just an example. If they seek justice, they're seeking someone out who can help them serve this justice, and to promote this idea of law. Or if it's as opposed to a Pegasus who's very timid, I would almost role play it in the sense that it is seeking out a companion, but not just any companion. It has to be the single right person. And if they do not like that person, no, there's no even bother trying to convince it. It's already made its decision. You are not the person who is going to be my companion. And that's how I would almost play these things. I might give the characters a few chances, but if the dice decide that, nope, later on you might be able to try again, prove yourself again. But it's going to be pretty difficult. I'm not just going to willy-nilly give my guys this kind of mount, or even a character, a person that they can affiliate with.
Philly, I get it. Actually, I forgot to mention with the Pegasi, in previous editions, they actually could cast Detect Good and Evil at will.
I remember that from...
That is no longer existent in current 5th edition rules, but these things just innately knew good from evil. I think you could easily roleplay that as well.
I gotta say, for these guys, when it comes to role-playing, the big thing that sticks out to me is the fact that they all come with their own alignment, and there's a big difference between the Pegasus, who is chaotic good, and then the Felidar, who is lawful neutral, right? I mean, they're still skewing on the side of the good guys, right? But the Pegasus might be more likely to be, because it's chaotic, more likely to interact, to nudge you with its nose or bite your shirt and try to tug you away, whereas the Felidar will sit there and watch. Like as long as things are still in order, these two people are fighting, it might not care. However, like arguing, fighting, it might not care. However, the Pegasus might become agitated. When it comes to the winged bull and the winged lion, you get to choose.
They have no alignment. Yeah.
Yeah. So that should really be whatever the alignment of the Archon is that they're tied to. But
if the alignment of the Archon changes, it changes with them.
Oh yes, I would say so.
I would have that.
Absolutely.
The exploration and clues is really going to be based on... It's hard with Celestials because you know the kind of storylines you're getting into with an angel shows up and decrees this or guides that, or it's not like some of the other creatures where you can do whatever you want. They're kind of bound by their lore. When these guys show up, though, is there anything in particular besides the fact that they can fly, besides the fact you're going to hear the fluttering of large wings? Brad, do you have anything for exploration or clues, or does this just go hand in hand with your Celestials?
I think the Pegasi do supply a special case for exploration where we know kind of where these things live, right? The climate that these things find themselves in, the areas where they dwell. So you could easily have some sort of exploration to try and track down a herd of Pegasi that are hiding or are, maybe they've gone missing. No one's been able to contact this herd, and there's a concern that they may be wiped out. Go find them, sort of thing. And tracking these things would not be easy. They're flight of foot. They move very quickly. They don't tend to settle down, and they are very aware of their surroundings and are likely to be hiding. So I think there is some exploration opportunities there with the Pegasi to track them down. The rest, I think, they kind of operate on the command of their Archon.
I really like the idea of them trying to find feathers. This idea that a lot of winged creatures leave feathers behind. These guys, I imagine, would be no different, but be a whole lot more rare. And if they find a single Pegasus feather, or a winged Felidar feather, it's kind of the clue that at least it was nearby, or that it might still be nearby. Or maybe it's a quest that they were sent out to go find it, or even to collect these feathers.
I'm a big fan of, now I'm going to say this, and I want you to know that I do mean specifically in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a big fan of harvesting parts off of dead creatures. And
Adam, do we need to talk?
Well, there used to be some general rules in previous editions. You would have this like, hey, when this creature dies, here's the loot on them. And I love the idea of if you can actually harvest the Pegasus's wings, you can make a cloak out of it and fly a limited distance, right? Or you'd be able to, can you imagine if you get a Felidar horn, you manage to hollow it out, it could purify any fouled water. You can drink from it. Or you'd be able to fashion an actual like horn, like you're blowing an instrument, like a horn of like a war cry going into battle to cause fear in the enemies or inspire your allies or something, right? So like there are some really neat ideas with these creatures, but I don't think you're going to get anything off the winged bull or the winged lion because if they died, they're part of the Archon, right? Like it's not like they're their own creature. That
they
think their whole
disappear when
body
the Archon
disappears.
dies.
Yeah.
Oh, I just had this crazy idea of using the horn as a single-use item to summon a hero's feast.
Yeah, see, like it's stuff like that you can think about when it comes to harvesting from creatures. And like I use unicorn horns as magical items all the time, and different unicorn horns do different things. So like that's a big factor in my games. Also, if you use unicorn blood in your mortar, then you can actually make your brick building scry proof as well. So that's part of the things that I do with dead unicorns. Unicorns and dragons in particular, my players know how to harvest and get the most out of what they got. Although they just realized that if they are able to harvest 2 eyeballs of a fiend, they can communicate through them. So
like sending stones?
Yeah, like Palantirs, they haven't figured out yet that they're not the only ones that can do that. Yeah, they're not the only ones watching.
I want my party to harvest the hooves of a Pegasus and make Jello, and they can levitate for an hour after eating it.
They just get all of the properties of flubber. So
just flopping around.
We got into their very specific attacks for each one of these guys, and obviously they're going to side with their Archons. I don't think there's too much to jump into unless you guys have any.
No, I mentioned it before. These things are not combat creatures. They're not designed to be combat creatures. Not that they can't be somewhat proficient in combat, but it's not why they were made.
Yeah. Or at least they're not designed to be only for combat. They can be used in combat in conjunction with the Archon.
Yeah, and again
the Archons ride them into battle.
If I'm going to throw one of these CR4, CR5 creatures at a tier 1 party, it's going to be as an ally and a guide because they're going to wreck house, right? Like I tend not to wave Celestials in front of a low tier party unless they're there to be a quest giver or someone that you've got to like. This is a long-term problem. We're going to deal with this later, right? So
I like the idea that you don't know if they're good. Like if you're a level 1 party, you don't know. Especially,
I mean, the Felidar could be a stand-in for a Sphinx at super low level, right? Like a low-level Sphinx, because they're lawful neutral, and they're just going to stand there all regally, and they're going to judge you, right?
They just can't speak to you.
All right, look, we're going super long on the mounts, and we still have angels to cover. So let's cut to our first ad break so we can get on to the real beefy bits.
We've previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on monsters in 5th edition. For all those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. If you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
This week on the It's a Mimic Patreon on Thursday, we'll be releasing part 2 of our conversation on the Deck of Many Things, this time focused on the Deck of Many Fates, where I sit down with one of my players and discuss the limitations of the product itself, as well as the creative inspirations that we come up with on how to use it. And then at the end of the week, we're going to release another one of our Metallic Great Worm episodes, where I sit down with one of the Patreons of the highest tier, and we sit down this time to build a Domain of Dread. But for now, let's get back to the episode. Okay, guys, so we've got 3 kind of angels here. 2 of them are Archons, although, I mean, frankly, the third one's pretty much an Archon as well. It just isn't called
It is an Archon.
Is it an Archon?
It is an Archon. Trust
there
me,
it is.
it's an Archon.
Yeah, right in the flavor text. There we go. So the 3 Archons. We have 3 Archons. And this is what happens when I don't research your shit ahead of time. So let's grab our dice and find out who's going to be talking about what first.
I got a 12.
14.
Got a 5.
Yeah, go Brown.
Nice.
It's Brown Town
Team
up in
Brown.
here. What can Brown do for you?
Cleveland Browns.
Okay, first of all, I gotta say, I'm so happy that we have Archons. Archons were things in previous editions, and I missed them. And when we only got Angels, like the Diva and the Planetar and Solar, I was a little underwhelmed in the Monster Manual. What the Celestials that were brought to the table were not that cool. Same thing with the Plants and Constructs and Oozes. I'm like, guys, we can do better. And sure enough, we're doing better in later books. All the ones
The
we're talking
Fiends
about,
always get good representation, and the Celestials just don't seem to get the same respect.
you want to know who you're fighting, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to know who you're allying with, because anybody can just say, hey, an angel comes down and talks to you, and everyone immediately has an image in their head of what an angel, the stereotypical Christmas angel looks like, right? And so
I go with the biblically accurate angel.
That's what I go for too.
I do as well, and I would absolutely kill to get a mini of one of those.
Oh,
They're out there.
jeez.
I'll see if I can find one for you.
The thing about Archons that I like so much is that, okay, so it says in not every time, but it says in the actual Christian Bible, when the angels show up, they often say, like, do not be afraid, right? And
There's a good reason they say that.
They're scary as fuck, right? Like, if you see them at first, you're like, oh shit, it is hitting the fan right now. While we don't get actual, like, that level of wheels with eyes and 10,000 baby faces, and like here are all the wings in every different direction you can think of. Like, there's some weird nutty things in, like, traditional angels, but when it comes to D&D, assuming you're not using Matt Colville's angels, you pretty much just have, humanoid looking guys with wings. The Archons, I think, are the ones that show up and they say, do not be afraid, because they come in with a fucking presence to them. Just based on the art alone on these guys, they are here to kick ass and take names. And mine, the one that I'm covering first, is going to be the Archon of the Triumvirate, and this is from the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Now, the last time we covered angels, we did this huge, big, deep dive on the Boros Legion. I don't want to do a huge Ravnica dive again, or a Theros dive for your guys's. So I will say these ones are aligned with the Azorius Senate, who are the lawmakers. And that is why the Archon of the Triumvirate is lawful neutral, and not necessarily on the good aligned scale. They're very much the most severe parts of law and order. And you can get that. There is a solid sense of justice just from the way that they interact with the world, the way they walk into a room. They are there to punish those that break the law. This is it. Not necessarily executioners, but they are here to stop the chaos and to impose order again. So they do look like just a human in armor. However, they are mounted. These guys don't have a fly speed, so they don't have wings. They rely on usually the Felidar, but they rely on their mount to be their winged creature, the way that they're able to fly around. They're often seen along other soldiers that are mounted on griffins that act also as peacekeepers and law enforcement as well. But they're more interested in the idea of maintaining order than in handing out necessarily, like, these are the laws that we've come up with. The Azorius Senate is the lawyers. They're the judges. They're Congress. They are the Supreme Court. The Boros Legion in Ravnica are police officers and military, right? So these guys are almost like bailiffs. They will be there to dispose or impose law at every single opportunity if it flies out of hand in front of them, and they will directly represent the Azorius Senate. I don't have the Azorius Senate in my homebrew world because I don't play in Ravnica. However, I do really like these guys, so they will swoop in to just be a figure of calm, proper justice. In old times, in the Wild West, they would have traveling judges and traveling executioners. I expect that this is what an Archon of the Triumvirate would be outside of Ravnica. Now, they do have a bond with the Winged Felidar mount, and like we were talking about before, it's a strong bond, and they're usually seen together. The Archon doesn't require food, drink, or sleep. doesn't say anything about water, which it usually, about air, which it usually does. So I guess you could suffocate or drown one of these guys. It also doesn't have any of that for the Felidar. The Felidar needs to eat and drink and sleep, which I think is an interesting relationship between the two of them. When it comes to the stats for him, we've got a medium-sized Celestial, lawful neutral, pretty decent armor class. He's a challenge rating 14, and you're going to learn why here in half a second. With an AC of 18, and it's all from his armor, but he's got 144 hit points on average, so that's 17d8 plus 68. Your standard 30-foot walking speed. All of his stats are way up there. The smallest one is a 15, and his wisdom and strength are both +5. Big saves to con, wisdom, and charisma, and of course insight and perception get big boosts. We're resistant to your standard magical shit, the bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. Is that all Celestials? I feel like that's all Celestials.
I think so, but
At least any Celestial over like CR6, right? Like it feels like that's just standard for Angels. You can't charm, exhaust, or frighten an Archon of the Triumvirate.
I think that is common across all Archons, I believe, but the damage immunities, I think, differ.
Yeah, damage immunities differ. That is not the case with some of them.
Really? Because I know that's the case with the other Angels. So, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they can't be charmed or frightened. Just the sheer willpower of the Archon is impressive. We have a passive perception of 20 and dark vision out to 120 feet, and it speaks languages all. So it is there to be a judge. Probably judge, jury, and I don't want to say executioner, but
if the need arises.
Big Daddy Archon is going to hand out the spankings, right? Like he is not going to just sit back and say, well, good enough. I hope we all learned our lesson and move on. So
you just awakened something in someone out there, just for the record. I don't know who it is, but I'm sure you just awakened something in someone.
Good job.
I know who it is. Anyway, so, when it comes to the features that it has Eye of the Law, which means that it has, as a bonus action, the ability to target any creature that it can see within 120 feet. And determine which laws that creature has broken in the last 24 hours. Dear Rogue, when one of these shows up, you run. Dear Bard and Barbarian, you are in trouble as well.
Do you think you're going to run these things? What's the point in running? It's going to find you. You're just delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, it is a Celestial, so like it's going to hunt you down. There's nothing really about its ability to hunt, but it's on a winged creature with the speed of 40 feet. So the Felidar alone is going to give it 80 feet. Like the monk will be able to outrun him, and maybe the rogue because of the bonus action dash
for a little while.
But the Archon is going to show up again, right? Like here we go. At will, though, they can cast Calm Emotions, Command, and a Compelled Duel, and they're intense spellcasters too. Their spell save DC is 18. They have a +10 to hit with spell attacks, although they don't have any spell attacks. I would definitely give them a couple of paladin-y things, perhaps a smite of some sort, because they're a Celestial. So, but they don't require material components because, Big Daddy Archon. So we talked a little bit about the bond with the mount. There are a couple of extra features that the Archon of the Triumvirate gets. Do your Archons get this as well? If the Archon is not incapacitated and it is mounted, both the mount and the Archon have advantage on dex saves, and the Archon cannot be surprised. Do you guys have that on yours?
No.
I'm looking on mine. I'm just reading through it. It does say something similar.
Okay.
Hold on. I was looking at yours.
Yeah, you're looking at mine.
No, the other two do not have it.
It does. Mine does, actually.
Does it?
Mine does.
There you go. Mine does not, that I can see.
Wild.
Well, mine has the name Rider in the name.
Oh, yeah. No, yours does. Yours does, Brad. I see it there.
Okay.
It's under the title of mount.
I didn't see the dex save portion.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
the part that I missed. I just must have not seen it as I was going through.
There's a lot of text here about it, like the fact that it can use a bonus action. It can also use a legendary action. That's right, we get legendary actions on Archons.
Yes.
In order
guys.
to just rejoin with their mount to teleport over and immediately be riding the mount again.
Yeah, it can do that portion, but I don't see anything here about it being able to have advantage on dex saves. And that's just missing something.
Yeah, you've got the falling stars, right?
Yeah, and I'm looking at the Ashen
yes.
Rider one. It does have well-mounted.
Second paragraph, Brad.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Three legendary actions?
No, second paragraph under mount. If you look at the mount stat.
It teleports appears astride the mount along with any equipment it's wearing or carrying. I wonder if D&D Beyond's missing it.
There you go.
Well, if the Ashen Rider is reduced to 0 hit points while riding its mount, the mount is reduced to 0 hit points as well.
I've got
But it is. Oh, you know what? It was the way that it was done. It goes up to the top of the other column, but it's the way it's split. I just didn't see it. I got it. Sorry, you'll have to cut all this in editing.
No,
there
are
it is.
you
I see it.
kidding? This supports my hatred for D&D Beyond.
Oh, it's there. I just can't read.
This supports my hatred for Brad.
Well, that's justifiable.
Like I said, we've got the ability to gain advantage on dexterity saving throws, and also can't be surprised. I don't know how often surprise is coming up in your campaigns, but it comes up surprisingly frequently in mine.
Not never. Not never.
Yeah.
like
Also,
to
as Tyler
surprise my
mentioned a minute
characters
ago,
with things.
if the Archon is reduced to 0 hit points while riding the mount is also reduced to 0 hit points as well. I kind of hate that for the Felidar and the Pegasus because they're
Yeah.
independent creatures. It makes a lot of sense for the bull and the lion, but it's in the stats. I'm probably going to pull that away and then just have the
Have it take
Felidar
off.
stand in some sort of like defensive position over top of the fallen Archon, right?
And the Pegasus is going to flee.
Yeah, I think so. Now, we do get 2 attacks in the multi-attack for the Archon of the Triumvirate, but they both have to be Hammer of Justice, which, by the way, is the name of my penis. It has a plus 10 to hit. It has a reach of 5 feet. Goddamn right it does. And it does 2d6 plus 5 bludgeoning damage plus 48 force damage, which
Ouch.
is
No piercing?
done.
No piercing damage.
You'll notice, there's no radiant damage here, which you normally get when you're dealing with Celestials. So it's straight up force damage. Now, I see this all the time, and I've always made an assumption for the first time reading this. I finally understood a mechanic. It says, if the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 18 strength saving throw or be knocked prone. You see this semi-frequently, especially that phrasing. And my thought process has always been, okay, so if it's not a creature, then it doesn't knock it over, doesn't knock the thing over. But no, if it's not a creature, it doesn't get a saving throw, and it is automatically knocked prone.
It's automatically prone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it hits the table, the statue, the keg, whatever it is, it falls
knocked
over. Right? Yeah.
Sure.
Like I don't know why that never occurred to me before, just because of the way that it was worded. But anyway,
What if it's a sentient item?
sorry.
What if it's a sentient item?
It's
I
not
would still have it.
It's not a creature.
Yeah, it would still be knocked prone.
It might argue with you.
The question is, what if it is a petrified corpse?
Oh, it's easily if it can't take a reaction, right? The whole thing
Yeah.
of avoiding being knocked prone is basically you're making a save to stay on your feet. A petrified corpse is just gonna fall over.
Well, yeah, and all like that's common sense, but also like it's written in the rules, and I don't think we've ever brought this
Yeah.
up on the podcast. It's written in the rules that the moment a creature dies, the moment it becomes a corpse, it becomes an object.
Yes,
Which makes a lot of sense.
It also
not a
kind of
creature.
fucks up a lot of wordings and stuff too. Like you can mend an object, so like if you
Can you
use the mending
cast
cantrip,
mendings.
right? Then
But you can just put the pieces back together if it's broken. It doesn't bring it back to life.
right, but that
would
will
allow that.
that will allow you to revivify, right? Like because if you lop the head
Oh.
off and the body's been
Yes.
destroyed, then you can't. But there's also a couple of resurrection spells that says you target the creature, but you're not. You're targeting a
You're
corpse.
not. You're targeting the
So
object.
like
Yeah.
use your common sense, right? So
Don't try and play word games.
look, that's what Dungeons and Dragons is about, my friend. The other action that it has, which is not a part of the multi-attack, is pacifying presence. So the Archon can choose as many creatures as it can see within 120 feet to force a DC 18 wisdom save, and if they fail, they drop whatever weapon they're holding, they stop whatever concentration they have on any spells or any other effects, and they become charmed by the Archon for 1 minute. Now, again, this is one of those things where like you can repeat at the end of each of your turns, ending the effect, and if you do, then you're immune for the next 24 hours. I hate that shit. It's never applicable. for a CR 15 Archon of the Triumvirate, there should not be a 15% chance that random villager just shakes it off and runs away every 6 seconds. That's underwhelming. So I always throw that out of my games, but you do you. Also keeping in mind that there are some playable races out there that cannot be charmed. So make sure you know who you're up against, DMs. When it comes to the legendary actions, they operate the same way. I'm going to go over it once now so that you guys don't have to, but you get 3 legendary actions. Each one of the different actions costs a different number of actions in order to cast it. So you have 3 options here. The first option for me is you can rejoin the mount. That's one I mentioned before. Or you can spend 2 legendary actions, at which point you quote-unquote smite, but really all you're doing is making a Hammer of Justice attack, and then the mount can also use a reaction to make a melee weapon attack, which, now that I'm thinking about it, it specifically says a melee weapon attack and not any kind of other attack. So, yes, both the bite and the claws for the Felidar are melee weapon attacks. Just got to be clear sometimes, because sometimes they've got funky wordings. And then the last one that costs 3 actions is called Detention, which kind of makes me laugh. It targets a single creature can see within 60 feet of it, then it has to save on a DC 18 charisma save, or be magically teleported to a harmless demiplane until the end of the Archon's next turn. And at that point, the creature that got teleported out teleports right back to where it was before, or to the next nearest unoccupied space.
It's the go think about what you did spell.
Yeah, this is like minor banishment, and it's a great way to ruin your barbarian's rage, which
take them right out.
Which actually really, really, really suits all of this pacifying presence, the eye of the law, this feeling that this creature is this just pinnacle of calmness and justice. Calm emotions, command, compel duel, no, you come here, right? And this is the conversation we're having. I would absolutely use one of these guys to knock my murder hobos down a peg and remind them that you cannot continue what you are doing here in the city. Hey, guys, do you ever put rules on your players? Like I do, no casting offensive spells inside city limits, shit like that.
Oh, absolutely.
I
There are
often have
laws to the land, and they need to follow them, or they will face consequences.
That's what I do, is more so when it does happen, I don't say they can't do it, but when it happens, there are consequences. It's not just you can get away with it. No, there's consequences for things that you do.
Oh, I let them do it. You technically can, but they are very much told when they enter the city, no offensive spells, no enchantment or charming, and necromancy has to be approved by a priest before you can cast anything.
That's all understandable for a civilized city.
Yeah, and
that depends on the city.
But then having an Archon sitting there in like town square of like a small, like I'm thinking almost like one of those small towns from the Wild West, right? And they've got the town square area, and he's just sitting there with this warhammer between his feet, just looking around. Everybody that walks out, he's like, I know if you cast spells. I know if you stole a thing. I know what you've done. And like,
I know every crime you've committed in the last
within the last
hours,
day.
48 hours.
Yeah. And like, I wonder if he just lets some of it slide too, because it's like this dude jaywalked, or if it's jaywalker, hammer of justice.
He has a talent.
I think there might be
once he gets a 5, then he doesn't.
Yeah. Differing levels of punishment, right? Punishment sets the crime, or is it just every crime is a capital offense?
Well, if it was a capital offense, would that be just?
Yeah.
This guy's all about calming everybody down and keeping the peace. Police state is not necessarily keeping the peace. No. And you have to wonder, is an Archon with the wisdom of 21, is he going to apply that to himself as well? I think he would hold it. I think he would hold himself as the pinnacle of the standard.
And be an example.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's grab dice. I have questions.
Ooh, 18.
Natural 20. Go Brown.
Go Brown.
For the first time ever, someone is rooting for the Browns. That was a football joke. So
I was at that.
Oh dear.
I don't think anyone from Cleveland is listening to this, and they don't have a leg to stand.
I don't think Cleveland exists. I think Cleveland is a myth.
So, quest ideas for these guys. Like I just said, I like this guy being in a small town and just overseeing it all. especially if the players are going to use this as a home base for the next little bit. You know, you like to give players a town or a small village that can consistently come back to over and over and over again. They know they're safe here in tier 1 and tier 2 because there's an Archon of the Triumvirate sitting in town square, and it doesn't need sleep. It has dark vision out to 120 feet, right? So the idea that he's just always on patrol, always wandering around, and the citizens feel safe, right? And you can just hammer that point home, pardon the pun, when the party rocks up and sees a couple of bandits running out of the bank, and the Archon just swoops in on the Felidar and says, nope, and just kicks their asses, knocks them to 0 hit points, stabilizes them, and puts them in the stocks in the middle of town, right?
Would you say he also has like a Batman vibe to him?
I mean, so one of the things that I skipped over really quickly is that he's got like a hood over his face, and you can't really see what's going on in the shadows underneath the hood. But for those that do, you see someone who is incredibly beautiful, but with the like most stern, harsh look on his face. So like Batman is consistently, Bruce Wayne's always considered to be like a handsome dude, right? Yeah. So I would say that there's a little bit of Batman, but if Batman were hanging out in town square in the middle of the day, right?
He doesn't stay in the
Green Arrow then.
No, Green Arrow's a punk. Come at me, Dan.
Oh, I like Oliver Queen.
He's a wuss.
I have no problems with Oliver Queen except when I'm on the podcast, because Dan and I have come to blows about this more than once. So, you know.
I'll just say it could be either or. There we go. There we go. I'm saying my piece. There we go.
The fact that you would even compare the two of them offends me. Okay, Brad, what do you have for a quest?
My quest is going to be, I'm going to use him as a low-level quest giver. He's going to send the party out on a bounty to collect, basically bring in a criminal who is so low level and unimportant that the Archon can't be bothered to do it himself.
When he sends them to go collect the bounty, does he call them his quicker picker-uppers?
Absolutely.
Good.
Actually, there's no way they're quicker, though. They're going to be much slower. But yeah, he's going to, right? Basically, the party is going to be this guy's gophers. Hey, I've got this guy. I know he committed a crime. I'm dealing with bigger things. I'm preparing for something else. Go get this guy for me. Bring him in. There's your job.
What's interesting here to mention as well is you say like he's praying for other things. He's working on other stuff. There's no mention in Ravnica of gods, really, right? Like it's all about the guilds running things. These are celestials that are operating like we were talking about in the last celestial episode. They're operating without gods, right? And that feels a little weird for the Archons. The Archons do feel like they are the pinnacles, the representation of a higher perspective, if not necessarily purpose.
Yeah.
They've often clashed with the deities, though, with the gods of Theros, anyways.
Yes, you guys have Archons that are very much dealing with gods.
Yeah.
But there's not so much in Ravnica. And I could still have this guy be a messenger or the fist of a god, right? That's there for peacekeeping.
You could. I see this more as demigods, right? They are
that makes more
below
sense.
gods, but gods unto themselves.
Well, I think most Celestials are, but like I do like the idea of giving this guy a deity to work under.
I wouldn't have any issue with seeing that, yeah.
But again, he's kind of written to do his own thing as well, and I'm comfortable with that for this one. Tyler, do you have a quest?
I actually, when I think of these guys, I don't think of them as like even as low level. Go collect this thug or whatnot. I think that when it comes to the Triumvirate, is that how you say it? Yeah.
Triumvirate.
I think of them more so as just peacekeepers. So they're going to send the party out on quests to help keep the peace. Go look at this, survey this area to see if this will be okay. Because they don't, and I think what he's doing is he's sending you out on these kind of missions to see if he can trust you, because he doesn't believe in you enough to deal justice. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to interrupt. I just had a thought. You finish off, and I'm going to spiral out.
Oh, that's right. More so, I think, you're earning his trust so that he can send you on greater quests to eventually go get this thug. I'm dealing with this big event over here, yet he's causing trouble. Go get him. But when you first meet him, he doesn't trust you to deal what he believes the justice should be.
So I had a couple of thoughts really quickly, and one of them is that you get a lot of cool gray area with this guy. For example,
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor that this person over here, I need you to go get them and bring them to me so that I can determine if they've broken the law. The rumor is that they stole, I don't know, the next farmer over's chicken or whatnot. And I need to know how long I'm going to put them in stocks for, if they've done this before, what they did they kill the chicken that wasn't theirs? There could be a number of things that are laws that have been broken here that have to be answered for. You know, like when you get stopped by the cops and you better be polite or they're just going to like rack up 45 fucking things to hit you with on the ticket.
Yeah.
So like, and then you go to go get the person, and it turns out that the person's like a 13-year-old girl who's, you know, the family's starving and she just wanted to do something good for her family, but did technically break the law. And now what do you do?
Yeah.
Right. And because he is the voice of the law, if you turn him down and say no, then are you sheltering the, you know,
Sheltering a
a
fugitive.
criminal, right? Like there's a lot of cool gray area to run with this. You got to do that with the right party, though. I think a lot of parties are just going to get pissed off and try to fight him, or it will just run away, right?
I would also say that this guy's wise enough. He is wise enough to know that the person may not come willingly if you send the party there and the party says the Triumvirate would like to see you. No, you would say to him, get them to come see me, but don't tell them who they're coming to see.
Yeah.
Or else they will not come.
Look, there's a lot of decent quest opportunities here as someone who is lawful and can see crimes. Like, that's wild. Like Unbreakable level. God, I love that movie. Unbreakable level insight into criminals. For role-playing opportunities, I mean, this guy's pretty boring because he's matter of fact to the point. I would just monotone, and I would even like pull my hoodie up over my eyes and just monotone at the players and never make eye contact with them when I'm speaking for the Archon. However, I like the role-playing opportunities for everybody else in the town around them, because you know what? You can trust your neighbors to not break a law. But you know what? Everybody is in kind of a police state, and the only way that they can, like, when you're mad at your neighbor for doing something, but they technically did it okay, right?
Yep.
God, the rumors. It's not illegal to spread rumors.
Nope.
It's not illegal to refuse someone help, right? Like, everything would be really petty in this town,
Yes.
and I think that would be really cool and really fun to see.
Yeah, I think
wanna
there
see
are.
how the-
You're dealing with lawful neutral here, right? Right. You're not dealing with lawful good. You're dealing with lawful neutral. So there's some opportunity here to really play. You mentioned it earlier, Adam, but really play in the gray zone, right?
Yeah.
You're not dealing with everything needs to be good and perfect and happy. You're not dealing with everything needs to burn and everything must be purified with fire. You're dealing in gray. You're dealing in the in-betweens. And there's a lot of opportunity there to really test the morals of your party, of your players, and really put them in some situations where you don't even know how they may react, and give them a chance to decide, is this good? Is this bad? Is this nothing?
And honestly, because it's lawful neutral, like, just to lean into the gray area, you can have someone with clearly shitty intentions, bad will, bad faith decisions that are technically legal, that the Archon will say, sorry, that's the way it is.
Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
They didn't break a law.
No,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And then what do your players do? Do they go against the Archon? Do they face off against them and say, look, this is terrible. How can you allow this to happen?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry, I can't lift a finger, and I forbid you from lifting a
yes,
finger.
that's
as
right.
well.
You
Right.
can't either. Should you lift a finger, you will be breaking the law, and I will have to deal with you.
At that point, I wonder if you're going to have a character, not metagaming, but a player. If you were to have a character in game who is smart enough, maybe to twist the words around to try and make it seem that they are breaking the law. If you look at it in this light,
It's a lawyer's playground.
It's a
Yep.
bard's playground.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
it is.
Even your rogue, I think, would have enough fun in here.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I think a rogue would be self-serving, though. It'd be fun, but
Oh,
like,
wait, 100% would be
for my own
self-serving, but what can I do without breaking the law that still benefits me?
Oh
Tyler,
my
do you have
gosh, I'm
any,
just thinking about.
do you have any role-playing ideas?
Yeah, I was actually more or less thinking what along you, Adam, in the sense of what is everyone else saying? Role playing opportunities around the city,
Yeah.
around, and not even the city. But what about the outskirts of the city? What if someone is sending you into the city to do something? So you got a quest from someone else to go into the city to do an action that this guy considers illegal, that is against the law. What do you do?
Sorry, the last thing that I really want to focus on as far as role-playing goes is language is all. fucking love this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not just giant and infernal and shit. Like, he speaks fucking hook horror, right?
And,
Like,
the most obscure of languages. He's got.
there's a bunch of weird monster languages out there, and this guy speaks them all. Like, I just think that there may be an opportunity to be like, bring me the hook horror so I can talk to him, because he's been breaking laws, but he doesn't know better, and someone needs to tell him we have a civilization. Go do your hunting out beyond our borders, right? Like,
Yep.
I want to see the rogue try and communicate with someone with thieves' cant while this guy's watching. Then all of a sudden he's doing thieves' cant himself, and it's like, oh damn!
I don't even think he does thieves' cant back. He just says no.
No.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
True.
For exploration and clues for this guy, there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff, because he's going to make himself known. He doesn't hide. He will be very much right there. You know that he's around if you can see his mount, right? And whether the mount is flying above, overhead, and that, like, people, like, there's a Felidar that's flying overhead all day, every day. As long as you can see the town in the distance, you can tell if the Archon is there. Sometimes the Felidar isn't there. That means the Archon is left, right? And that would be an indication of whether or not the Archon is present to impose rule. So that'd be something I'd be watching for. But I mean, it's not a whole lot here, right?
I'd say there's some opportunity. I could imagine this Archon coming into, let's say there's a decent sized town with a properly armed militia, and you have this Archon who, this place is just lawless, right? This is the epitome of the Wild West. And the Archon wants to come in and deliver justice, but he knows he can't just come in, stand up, deliver his message, because he's going to be run out of town. There's just too many people for him to take on the whole city. So what's he doing? We talked about Batman earlier, right? He's coming in the night. Criminals are disappearing, like known, maybe gang leaders are disappearing from their homes at night, right? That's what I see as your clues and your exploration.
I love the idea too that, like, you hear the flapping of large wings, but you're in the third story building, and then suddenly this guy's peering into the window, and he knows.
And he knows that, he's just watching. Your sheets are just moving. He knows
just starts to suddenly move backwards, and then you just watch him. He's just looking at you the whole time.
I like to watch.
Then he hits you with the batarang.
I think there's an opportunity there, right, to really lean into, here are the clues. So your party, there's a good chance, unless you got some real metagamers or some really experienced players, an Archon's not going to be something they've heard of.
Yeah, but you got to remember as well, he will not break and enter. He's not a vigilante.
That's true.
So that's the other thing.
He'll take somebody off the streets, should it be lawful, right? They're heading back from the tavern at night, and they disappear.
Well, you know what? That's a great thing, is he would say, he would, like, knock on the window. Can I come in? I'm here to arrest you.
He's a vampire.
And when it's like, no, you can't. Like, all right, then I will wait outside until you come out. Wait. All right.
I'll watch until morning.
Yep. And then that person is essentially under house arrest, right? Until it, and the Archon just sits outside for, I don't know, 25 days and goes, all right, you served your time.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
What did I do? You jaywalked 10 days.
Yeah. It's 3 days in the stocks, or you can stay inside for 25 days. Like, you're under house arrest. Tyler, do you have any exploration or clues for these guys?
The only exploration I'm going to have is the town itself that they're serving under. You're going to see that's very lawless. It's very lawful, as opposed to Brad saying that they're going to go into a lawless town. If they're a town that they're presiding over, it is pristine. There's no criminal activity. There is nothing, because they're too afraid of this guy. I think so. Even if you don't know he's around, you're going to notice the town itself. There is not a single thing out of place when it comes to anything to do with law.
Oh shit! These guys would be great wardens.
Yeah,
they would be.
For combat, I mean, clearly you have that. Look, every time you get multi-attack, I always think that's the thing you should use second. You always use the big fuck off awesome thing that's given first. So that's the pacifying presence. You come in, you use the pacifying presence. You might cast calm emotions first, if it's only one or two people, or compelled duel if people have already popped off. But swinging the hammer of justice has got to be the last resort, right? That's going to be round two or three, right? So he wants to calm everybody down. He wants to take the piss and vinegar out of the barbarian and the angry rogue and the punch happy monk, right? I'm curious too. Like, he's a beacon of justice, and it does say in the flavor text that he deals ruthless punishment. to those who break the law. God's laws or man's laws? And that's going to depend on whether or not he follows a particular deity or a pantheon, right?
That's true. Is what does he consider it?
Like paladins, he probably has his own code, right? Those are the laws that he probably follows. There's his own code.
Exactly.
It's very simple in Ravnica because you have the Azorius Senate, right? And that's the answer there.
That's who they answer to, yeah.
The question is, whose laws reign over this area, and whose laws do he think should be? So, like, even if they don't believe in his deity or his pantheon, but they should, he will come in and lay that down as well.
That's right.
So, any ideas about combat?
Yeah. I mean, let's look at this legendary action of detention, right? You brought it up earlier. This is going to be a key point. Every round, this is going to go off more than likely, right? Unless the combat is so intense that he's having to use his smites or jump off the mountain, rejoin it. He's going to be using all 3 legendary actions once a round to cast attention and put a hold on whoever he needs to put a hold on.
Yeah, and he can chain this to the same person over and over and over again, right? So,
and just it's like a hold person almost, right? It's very effective at.
Yeah. Tyler, anything for combat?
When I think of combat for these guys, I really want to use that mount ability of teleporting, in the sense of they could be in the middle of combat, like they've gotten everyone's attention and they're about to have a big combat and they're about to all essentially jump onto him, and he just teleports out of there on top of his beast, which is on top of a building looking down on all of them. And at that point, he just can cast pacifying presence or detention, or at that point he can just talk and say look, and tries to dissuade the combat.
Yeah. He's not the type to flee, right?
It's interesting because
he's not the type to get himself into a combat unless he knows he's going to have the upper hand.
Yeah.
So fleeing is not really going to be the primary use for this. But yeah, gaining control of the battlefield would be the use.
That's exactly it.
The other thing that I just want to point out before we move on from this Archon and move on to the next, because we've gone so long on mounts and this one guy. But the one thing I want to point out is this is the only time I think the compelled duel is used defensively. Stop what you're doing, look at me, stay with me, point your rage at me, calm emotions, right? Or
command.
Detention, or
drop your weapon in command or whatever.
Yeah, come here, talk to me, right? Like, I think that's a really interesting use of that. Normally it's in the battlefield where you're like, you and me to the death, right? But not this time. I think it's used defensively. So I think that's
defensively or to pull attention off of someone else, a weaker victim.
Yeah,
right? They're bullying somebody. You say, no, you don't fight them. You fight me. Get over here.
Yeah,
pick on somebody your own size.
Exactly.
Or much bigger than you.
Yeah, I was going to say much bigger than you.
I think Brad, you were next, weren't you?
I was next. Yeah, let's dive into this. The Archon of the Falling Stars.
Now this is in Theros, is it?
We're done. Theros. Yeah,
we're done with Ravnica.
We're done with Ravnica. We're on to Theros. At the beginning of the lore of Theros, there's an event called the Cosmology, which is a battle between the gods' champions and one mighty Archon. The Archon was defeated. However, Heliod showed up and showed mercy to this Archon, who swore to uphold justice and righteousness in the wildest of places. And as a sign of mercy, Heliod gave the Archon a spear, and he was the first of the Falling Stars, and the rest have followed in those footsteps. So that's kind of the lore of these guys.
Do I get this right? Can you guys tell me, were Archons like the Titans of Theros?
You could look at it that way.
Because they're against the gods at first, right?
But they're kind of against the gods. They were basically rulers. They were rulers over vast empires within the cosmology of Theros.
Okay.
And there were a lot of them.
They consider them basically to be champions of like merciless justice, and they like iron-fisted rulers. And the gods came in and said, "No, you're doing too much. You are oppressing these people." And they came in and basically toppled all of them, scattering them to the winds.
All right. Okay. Interesting.
All right. Yeah. So that's Theros' take on the Archons. Archon of the Fallen Stars is a lawful good, medium-sized celestial. They have an AC of 18 in plate armor, very similar to the Archon of the Triumvirate. They themselves have a standard movement speed of 30 feet and 144 average hit points, which is 17d8 plus 68.
That's exact same, hey?
Yeah, exact same hit points. Like that stat block is there. They are going to come in a little lower CR. They are only CR 12 versus, I believe, 14 for the Triumvirate.
Yeah, which is odd because your stats are the same too, aren't they?
The stats are pretty much identical, right? You're dealing with +5 to strength and charisma and wisdom, +4 to con and charisma, and +2 everywhere else.
Yeah, that's exactly the same like numerical stat block.
And I think their their saving throws might actually even be better because they've got +9 in strength, 8 in con, 9 in wisdom, 8 in charisma. Like I think their saving throws are actually better.
That is better. Yeah. Interesting.
These guys, really interesting is where you get a lot of flavor on these is in their skills. It's Arcana, History, Insight, and Perception. So Arcana and History are the ones that I really pull out of, right? These guys have been around a long time. They know a lot about the cosmos of the world, including all the magics. We talked earlier about immunities. These guys are immune only to radiant damage. So there is a difference there. But like the Triumvirate, they are immune to being charmed, exhausted, or threatened. Here's another way where they've got 1 foot up on the Archon of the Triumvirate. Passive perception is good, but they have true sight of up to 120 feet.
Oof, yeah, that beats.
You're not hiding from these, and language is all again.
Yeah.
They are spellcasters again, so their spellcasting modifier is only +9, not +10. But they can at will cast Command, Guiding Bolt, or Spare the Dying. And once a day, they can cast one of my favorite spells, Crusader's Mantle, or Spirit Guardians. 2 spells which I absolutely love.
This guy feels like a spellcaster more than a.
More so, definitely more so than
or cleric
or the Triumvirate.
Yeah.
Yes. They are resistant to magic. It's given the same mount ability that we discussed earlier that I misread, and they have Radiant Rebirth. So Radiant Rebirth for these guys, at once per long rest, if the Archon is reduced to 0 hit points, they automatically regain 30 and burst up with this burst of radiance that comes from them. So anybody within 30 feet needs to make a DC 16 Constitution saving throw or take 3d8 radiant damage and is blinded. So you knock this thing out, it bursts up 30 hit points, and you got to make a save if you're close to it. As far as actions go, the Archon can make it has a multi-attack, so it can make 2 attacks with its Radiant Spear. That is a +9 to hit, dealing 2d6 +5 piercing damage and 3d6 radiant damage. So is that radiant damage you expected?
So I'm just gonna call it now, right? Whatever the multi-attack thing is, that's gonna be the name of each of our respective genitals. Hammer of Justice and Radiant Spear is just.
I've got the Radiant Spear. Yeah, that's right.
Tyler's scrolling. What's mine? What's mine?
No! I got 2. I got Ashen Blade, a Bolt of Ash.
I've got some bad news for you, Adam. What was your reach? 5 feet?
Yep.
I got 10 feet reach over here.
Yeah, but it's about the girth. Come on, hammer versus spear.
That's right. Motion of the ocean. You gotta know how to use it. And then, like the other Archons, we're gonna deal with some legendary actions here. So for one, they've got 3 legendary actions they can use per round. So one of them is an attack, which allows them to make a Radiant Spear attack or a Guiding Bolt attack, one or the other. The other option, which is really interesting, Coordinated Assault, costs 2 actions. The Archon makes a Radiant Spear attack, and then its mount can use its reaction to make a melee weapon attack.
That's the same thing that I had too, right? Like
it is. It's just worded. Yeah. It's just a different name. Different.
Yeah, but it's essentially the same thing. I guess it's the 3 action thing that really pops off, right?
Yes, it is. And in this case, I mean, again, being set here within Theros, we're dealing with Return to Nyx. So Nyx, the original, right? The origin of everything is Nyx.
Well, Nyx is the underworld now, right?
Yeah.
So it's Hades, I believe, or at least close enough.
Close enough, yeah. The Archon allows, basically what it does is it's a corpse explosion. If there is a corpse within 30 feet of it, it causes it to burst into a shower of radiant stars, leaving behind no trace of it. Anything it was wearing or carrying remains, but the creature itself disappears. Anything within 10 feet of the corpse must succeed on DC 16 saving throw or take 4d10 radiant damage. So basically, it explodes a corpse. It's no longer gone, which also means you're not going to be able to revivify this thing.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a fuck you revivify.
Yeah,
that is going to ensure that a death stays death.
Yeah, mending is not going to fix this one.
I want to ask you: does it seem like it says radiance? It bursts into a shower of radiant stars.
Yes.
Now, is it going to be like kind of like glitter?
Yes.
And if it gets on you, it's like impossible to get off.
Oh no, it's just going to burn you.
I honestly feel that
it's going to burn you, and you can't get it off.
I feel like it's a brighter, less destructive kind of, when you're around a campfire and you get all the embers that are like raining down. Some asshole throws dry leaves on and it just starts raining bits of
fire.
Radiant fire. Like it's not as destructive. It's not going to put a hole in your t-shirt, but like, yeah.
The visual for me is more like a sparkler. Just very big and very hot, but it's going to be a flash. It's going to.
And are we still
Light
talking
up.
about your radiant spear or no?
Oh yes, very much so.
Okay. It's like a sparkler.
Yeah, it's like a sparkler. A lot of fun to play with.
I think of it as like the Amazon boxes that are rigged sometimes, and then it explodes.
All right, grab dice. I got questions. Unless there's anything else, Brad, are we?
No, that's all.
All
Let's
righty.
keep this train moving.
18.
5.
You got to join Team Brown, Tyler.
Yep. Come on over to Browntown.
Kept the
Title
brown
your sex
dice.
tape.
A quest idea for these guys. Honestly, I want this guy to be my end boss at the end of a huge, big 9th level dungeon crawl kind of situation. You're finally going to get to the boss, and he's there, and he is just, in the name of good, handing out punishment. These guys are champions. They're warriors, right? And so they're there to uphold justice and righteousness, and it's the word righteousness that stands out to me in their lore. And so, like, this is your stereotypical angel gone rogue because I know better than the mortals, right? So you go to fight him, and I think it's got to be deadly enough that you're going to lose a couple NPCs and maybe a player, and I'm not going to shy away from the return to Nyx, right? The idea of just
no, absolutely not. Yeah,
just blowing up a corpse left, right, and center. But until I get a corpse, I like, as much as I like the radiant damage, the 4d10 radiant damage, I'm not going to litter corpses around at first. I want corpses to show up, right, partway through. So there'll be minions or something around. But until then, like, you have coordinated assault and attack. This guy's just doing attack.
multiple attacks. Yeah,
I wish they had flyby. I wish they all
that would
had
be
flyby.
really nice.
Oh, that would be cool.
I think that if you're going to add flyby, you have to assume the challenge rating goes up by, I'm going to say 2 points.
2.
Right?
I was going to say 2 as well. Yeah,
Just because you're also stuck flying. Like, you've added 3 dimensions now to this fight. So it's weird that we're not getting any ranged weapons, but I think that would be a little too powerful.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
just a range. Yeah, you got guiding bolt.
You have guiding bolt, yeah. So there are a couple of things, but it's not like you're sitting there with a Solar's bow and arrow, which is so deadly.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brad, what do you have for like a quest for these guys?
Quest for these guys. Again, these, I like the way that you went, but I'm gonna go on the other side where these guys are upholding the good rather than overextending their reach. Despite the fact that, you know, the history of these is, you are on point to say, right, they're overextending and they are the big bad guy who are dishing out way too much justice.
Yeah.
I would go the other way, and I would almost have one of these guys surrounded by a whole militia in a town, maybe just outside. And I'm going to do a little biblical pull here, and we're going to go Sodom and Gomorrah style, right? They've been sent by one of the gods. Basically, this town is so evil that it just needs to be wiped off the face of the earth. And your job is actually to go in and find a reason for the city to not be destroyed. Find some good within the city to return and say, hey, this is why the city should not be razed to the ground. And you're going to have to find some pretty convincing evidence.
Hey, can I ask a sidebar question? I don't know if you guys know this.
Yeah.
It's going to sound like I'm making a joke, but I'm legitimately curious about the second half of this question. So get past the ridiculous setup here. So Sodom and Gomorrah obviously Sodom is the base root of the word sodomy. And I assume that because of all the sin and debauchery and stuff, so on and so forth, in the accounting of what happened at Sodom and Gomorrah, that, like, that's a part of it. Is Gomorrah attached to a specific act or defilement or anything by the Bible standards? I'm not passing judgment on Sodom. But like, is Gomorrah a thing as well?
Not a specific act.
Okay.
It is just the name.
Okay.
Yes, we do derive the word sodomy from the city of Sodom. That is true.
But
but
there's no
Gomorrah,
act of Gomorrah.
There's no act. No, there's no Gomorrah adjective or verb.
Yeah.
There's no verb for Gomorrah.
It's just more so become known as, people know that idea of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the place setting, not so much a. It is you put it two and two together.
Sure. Okay. I was just curious if there was a.
No, it's a fair question,
parallel.
but no, not that I'm aware of. There is no.
Oh, all right.
Associated act.
Okay. Cool. Tyler, do you have a quest for these guys?
It's hard with these guys because, as you said, they kind of just going in and they are essentially trying to correct things that are there.
honestly, these guys kind of feel like the Monster Manual angels, as far as the fact that like
that's the thing, is that they don't feel like a quest giver. They feel more of they're someone you encounter while on a quest.
I do want to point out that they're also really lined up to be a great ally for, I'm going to say, a tier 4 party, because a CR12 creature is going to be able to hold their own shoulder to shoulder with the level 16 party, right? Yep. And now you have someone with Spare the Dying, right?
I think what this is more so is they're not giving you the quest; they are joining you on the quest. You've been assigned with this person. You
guys saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie, right?
Yes.
So, remember how Zank the Paladin joined for a very brief period of time as a high level person?
Yeah.
And then he finished his mission, and then he moved on.
And he gets off. Yeah, he's done.
Yeah, that's what this guy feels like.
Guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For role playing, like, he's matter of fact. Like, he's super wise and super charismatic, but I think his charisma is all based on like knowing other people and knowing how to interact with people.
And power of will, right? It's an imposing of will.
Yeah.
I really like that. This is the DM's player character.
Yeah, kind of. In order to keep the rest of the fucking party on track.
Yeah.
Goes up and just says,
goes back in line.
Yeah. No, we go left, and then goes left. Right.
Again, we can pull that Zank parallel. Same idea, right?
Yeah.
The party's going completely off the rails. He's like, no, you need to go here. We need to do this. Good, it's done. I'm out.
Brad, was that yours for role playing as well? Like, are we on the same page? Yeah.
I think we're on the same page. I mean, these guys are pretty straightforward. They're no nonsense. These guys are rolling intimidate rather than anything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to try and sway you. They're not going to try and persuade you. They're just going to tell you what it is, and then they're going to do it. And if you come, great. If you don't, you're on your own.
The other thing that I want to point out about this guy is that it does say that he's penitent.
Yes.
For just a moment, he is penitent, which means that as much as he's all about justice and righteousness and moving forward and stuff, I think that what makes him more of an ally than most of the other angels is that he's going to admit when he's wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rarely going to be wrong. And you know what? I think if it penitent happens, also you can acknowledge the fact that he has made a mistake and is going to spend the rest of his existence trying to right that mistake or make up for that mistake.
Yeah. Exploration and clues for this guy. Again, I'm leaning on the winged mount more than anything else. I think that it doesn't say it anywhere, but this guy glows, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And even if he doesn't, his spear is, right?
Yeah.
You've got this, and the spear is not just glowing, it is going to be radiant like a beacon. Like if he's flying over top, you will see a light. In the middle of the day, you'll see a light emanating from the spear.
I want to ask you guys, did you guys ever play StarCraft?
Yeah.
I see this like the Archon in StarCraft.
Yeah, yeah, you know,
like that kind of glow to it and that overwhelming presence.
I don't feel like he's illuminating a room, but he is definitely like glowing.
He himself has a radiance around him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let's unless you guys have anything else, can we move on to combat?
I just want to touch on the artwork, which shows them specifically riding the flying bull, and I think that is way more representative. This guy is not the roaring lion, he is the bull. He is charging in head first. He is charging in unrepentant.
Even his helm has the bull horns on
it.
Right?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, you can make one of these guys themed around the lion, but I feel like the bull is the better fit.
I agree. Also, I love all of the horns coming off of the bull too. That's awesome.
That is pretty cool.
For combat, for these guys, like honestly, it's get as many attacks in as quickly as possible.
All attacks, all the
attack, and the fact that you can use your legendary action at the end of other people's turns. I would just do guiding bolt. Right?
Start a combat though. You're pulling out the Spirit Guardians. That should be your first move.
Oh, I agree. But I think the goal here for this guy specifically is drop corpses quickly because then you can blow them up.
Yeah. I would say he would drop corpses quickly. Do that to try and intimidate.
Also, I'm going to say this as well. If your players have never seen this guy before, don't blow up the first corpse that shows up.
No.
He's got
to wait for
points.
people to get... He's smart enough to know, right? The range of this is only a 10-foot explosion. He's not going to blow up a corpse where there is no one nearby. He's going to wait till people... He's going to wait till your cleric comes to try and stabilize or bring this guy back. And that's when he's going to explode.
It's a legendary action. So
yeah, I also think that he's going to move to the other side. Like, so he dismounts. The mount moves to the other side of a pile of corpses, right? And then, he uses that bonus action to then
To
go
get
over
on the
the
back of the mount.
right, forcing your players to go past the corpses or over them,
Yeah,
and
a
keeping
whole
the
train.
players in range or the enemy in range of the corpse explosions while he is just outside of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, intelligence is high on this guy. His mastery of the, I mean, +2, it's not massive, but with a wisdom of +5 and intelligence of +2, this guy knows how to control a battlefield.
He's also immortal.
Absolutely.
He's done this before.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And the thing about a warrior that is immortal, that is still running around and fighting, means that they win. They always succeed, which means they have to have good tactics. Otherwise, they'd be dead.
Exactly.
Tyler, anything for combat?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. Again, I want to use that return to Nick's idea of more of intimidation. I don't. He's going to pile up a couple corpses and then use that. I don't see him as wanting to massacre everyone. I see him as massacre half of them, blow up their corpses, so the other half know that, okay, we'll stop. We're done. Okay,
I think
we've learned our lesson.
I think he's got to have a really cool catchphrase too when he blows them up too. Like, he's got to raise his hand and clench his fist and say something just fucking badass. I don't have anything off the top of my head right now, but just like
Sparkle fly.
Slightly more badass than that, Tyler.
I think one last thing before we move on. We slept a little bit on this, but Crusader's mantle tells you that he does not fight alone, right?
Oh.
Yeah, I was under the impression that he would go home and hang his radiant spear above the Crusader's mantle in his living.
That's right. No, I mean, we're looking at a spell, right? 30-foot radius, and everybody who is within the aura deals 1d4 radiant damage when it hits with a weapon attack.
Yeah.
Like, he's buffing his friends. He's not working alone.
And
This
also, command at will.
Yes, at will command. Absolutely.
We haven't been talking about it, but like, we can't sleep on it.
No, you can't. Like,
That's real powerful.
This is also why I think it's definitely he's with you on a quest. You're the ones that are buffed by this when he does that.
Yeah. He'll talk you down, but if he can't talk you down, then watch out because the spears are going to start flying.
All right.
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on to the last Archon.
Okay. First and foremost, I will say this. When I first looked into this guy, my first impression was, oh, damn, he's scary. The Ashen Rider is who I am looking at. He's not an Archon. It's not in his name. Yes, he's an Archon. Yes, Adam, he is.
Yeah, it says that. I'm sorry, it's the 6th word into his paragraph.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
in the descriptor.
But I actually really like this because we talked about lawful good, lawful neutral, and all this. This is what happens when we see a lawful evil Archon. And essentially what has happened is at the fall of the Archons, when it all collapsed upon itself, there's a group of Archons that did not want to be with the human society, or I would almost go as far as to say humanoid society, because there's a lot of them. And so they delved underground to the Underdark, but it was there that it just kind of twisted their souls. It twisted who they were to this idea of wanting to essentially get revenge on all human and humanoid society, to the point where it became their sole mission to turn all of it to ash, hence why they're called the Ashen Riders. These guys, as I said, are scary, not just because of their abilities, which we're going to learn in a little bit here, but just this idea of if you come across one of these guys, it's not going to talk you down. It's not going to try and make it a peaceful situation. No, he's just going to straight up murder you because he does not like you.
Hey, I got to stop you for half a sec. Look closely at the art. Those are breasts.
Yeah, that's a lady.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, you could look at the Archon of Falling Stars. The art doesn't really hold up. It obfuscates a lot of the Archon themselves. But I think they're both women.
I think you're right. Yeah. And again, it could be either, but yeah, I think that's definitely worth pointing out that it's not a male-centric thing. It could be male or female.
Or neither.
Scary. Or neither.
These are celestials.
Exactly.
They don't have to be gender.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I actually look at the art here, if I ignore the whole gender aspect of it, it almost gives me like Witch King of Angmar vibes. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was also going to say you're getting a little bit of the Themyscira vibes as well from the Wonder Woman from the Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has that real evil presence. but not a Themyscira. Well, Themyscira, it's supposed
The
depending on
Themyscira has its own rule, but like the power warrior, right?
Exactly. Yeah. When I think of the Ashen, who this thing is, what it represents of just pure evil. It's an armor-clad evil warlord. And sorry, that was just the first one that came to my mind, was just the Lord of the Rings there, the Nazgul. So these guys, again, even though they're in the underworld, they do come up and cause absolute terror. Maybe this is something that the other Archons is sending you after. Their CR rating is 16. So the highest CR rating yet out of all of the 3 that we've looked at today. And for very good reason. First and foremost, their HP, for their AC is 18, so same as the others, but their HP average is 178, but 21 D8 plus 84. These guys are hefty. They get speed 30 feet, same as the others, but if they're on a mount, whatever the mount is, the stats, again, relatively similar. It's almost the exact same, almost, compared to the Archon of the Falling Stars. So I'm not even going to go over it too much, because we just did. And the skills, it's almost the exact same, except it doesn't have Arcana. It's immunities, though.
Hold on, its Dex is higher, is 1 point.
Yeah, I said it's almost the same.
Yeah.
Dex is 1 point off, and the Charisma is 1 point off as well.
That's 1 point down, but the modifier is the same for Charisma.
Yeah, it's relatively pretty close.
It's wild to me, it's just wild to me as a sidebar that we've got CR 12, 14, and 16 with such similar stats. And when people sit down to look at building their characters or building their monsters, they put so much emphasis on strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, and they're not thinking about the other shit. And it's the other shit that matters.
It's all in the actions, the legendary actions, the spells.
Oh, and this guy in particular, his actions, what he can do, scares the shit out of me. As a player, I would not want to come up against this guy. His damage immunities is Thunder. Okay, that's it. Again, same as the rest. He has immunity to Charm, Exhaustion, Frightened. He has, again, that True Sight as well for 120 feet. Languages all. So there's the boring stuff. Let's get to the good stuff. The very first one I saw is this thing called Aura of Silence. This is bad news for any spellcaster because it can target creatures within that 30-foot radius and that starts its turn within the 30 feet. An aura in this thing has to make an DC 18 wisdom saving throw. Or if it fails, they can't speak and are deafened until their next turn. Now, I imagine...
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out the freaking theme here. It says Ashen Rider, and I'm thinking fire. There's nothing fire here. Damage immunity, Thunder, Aura of Silence. Okay, so it's Sonic. There's nothing Thunder in its spells.
No.
I know. I was trying to look at that too, and I didn't get it.
It's wild that this...
No, it does. We'll find out later.
Okay.
Look at its actions.
Okay.
I do see it now, if you look at its actions. But on this thing, I imagine you're repeating this every single round until you can beat an 18 wisdom saving throw, which if you're facing off a challenge rating of 16, it's not going to be too hard to beat an 18, but it's still going to be difficult enough.
There's a good chance you're going to fail a round or two.
Exactly. And if you do, you're deafened and you can't speak. That means you're not casting any spells that require a verbal component.
A verbal component,
Yeah. So that in itself, I just love the idea of an aura. We don't have enough of them.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And it's good. It's good on a celestial. That feels good.
Yeah. It really does. So they also have innate spell casting. Similar to Adam's, they have the idea of command and compel duel. And I feel like in this case, they are going to compel duel for the idea of come at me. But they also have banishment and blade barrier. These guys aren't going to be your heavy spellcasters. Again, they have the mount thing, which we've already talked about. I'm not even going to get into that. Let's talk about their actions. They have a multi-attack. They can take, this rider takes 3 attacks with its Ashen Blade, or it can do 2 attacks with this Bolt of Ash. This is where we see that lightning come in, with the Bolt of Ash. So that Ashen Blade, it's essentially just a melee weapon attack. Again, an average of 14 plus 13 radiant damage. So you're looking at, 27 per hit. If he gets 3 of those attacks.
That 2d12 radiant damage is gnarly.
Yeah. That is, so if he gets 3 of those, that's pretty decent. And here's the thing. The other guys didn't necessarily kind of had a ranged attack and guiding bolt. This guy is great in his actions with the bolt of ash. So instead of guiding bolt, he has a bolt of ash. Essentially, it's a range of 120 feet, and the average is 22 necrotic damage, which I find is crazy. You have a radiant damage, and then you have necrotic damage. And what's better about this is if you're hit with it, you can't regain the hit points until the start of the Ashen Rider's next turn.
And your players
we're doing necrotic damage here, though. This damage immunity thunder still doesn't make sense.
But bolt, yeah.
Bolt is nothing.
Yeah, come on,
It's just the
lightning
shape, the
bolt.
form.
I'm sorry, there's bolts and crossbows. Like,
yeah, no,
that's
I'm trying
that's
to
the
find something
shape.
target.
No, that's the
desperate.
shape more than the.
yeah, no. This doesn't
I
help
know.
strengthen that case. It still makes no sense that you're immune to thunder.
Hey, don't blame me. Don't blame me. I'm just the
I'm
messenger.
not blaming you. It's just odd.
Calm down, Brad. Calm down.
Tyler. I'm blaming.
Calm
you.
emotions.
I'm blaming.
Fine, be that way. But I love that effect that you cannot get healed from this damage until his next turn.
And your players won't know that. Your players will not know that until
They'll
they
blow
try to
healing
heal.
spells and potions. Yeah.
They're gonna burn a heal before they figure that shit out.
And here's the thing. If we look at the wording closely, it says the target can't regain hit points until the start of the Ashen Rider's next turn. So if the player's been damaged heavily already, they get hit by this thing. It's not a matter of they can't regain hit points that was from the Bolt of Ash damage. No, they don't get healed, period.
Yeah, it's a full round of no healing.
Yeah, the full round of no healing on it. So that in itself, they can do that twice, and from 120 feet away, that's decent. You start to see that challenge rating is 16.
Also, you're on a flying mount, so it's 120
you are
down, right?
Yep.
So
good luck. Now the legendary actions. Again, the first 2 that we see here, they're the same as what we've seen. You can either spend 1 to do an attack, 2 coordinated assault. We've seen those. But this one that takes all 3, it is called Reduce to Ash, which in and of itself makes you quiver.
And the quiver is where I keep my bolts. Yes, it's all ties together. Yeah, there we go.
This is why he has immunity to thunder. But essentially, anything he can see within 60 feet, the target makes that an 18 Constitution saving throw, which isn't everyone's highest, or they're going to take 27 on average of 5d10 of necrotic damage, and it's also going to reduce their hit point maximum, which I always love playing with that, because you're playing with the character sheet at that point.
That hit point maximum is equal to the 5d10 whenever you rolled.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's reduced that, and it lasts until they finish a long rest. It's not just a round.
This is not permanent.
It's not permanent, but it's not just a single round. And here's the really cool part. This is kind of along the lines of the Falling Stars. If the target's maximum is reduced to 0, everything in the body except for magical items is reduced to ash. So kind of like the body exploding, but it's reduced to ash. It's just, instead of going outwards, it's just inwards, just ash. And then
you're doing 4d10 bolt of ash, 4d10 twice, and then 5d10. You're forcing that save as a legendary action. This is a player killer.
Yeah,
this
absolutely
really is. That's you again. Challenge rating of 16. DMs,
you're dropping max hit points. They can't heal. It's wild.
Yeah,
it is.
This is a battle. You have to be able to pump the damage before this thing can take your party down. That's what it comes to. Right.
Hence
and there's no resurrection.
Yeah, there is. Because the only thing that can bring this thing back is nothing short of a wish spell, if you even have that in your campaign. So this is why, when I first read this, I was scared to be a player character in front of this guy. So he is, a player killer, absolutely. Because remember, he's not wanting to be reasoned with. He just wants you dead.
DMs use this ability on your NPCs, not on your players, unless your players really deserve it, because occasionally they do.
Or if the player wants to get out.
So do we have any...
That's what we got for the Ashen Rider.
Yeah, do we have any final thoughts, or should we roll dice on these guys?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
That's a 12.
10.
I think that's
my gosh. I got a 5.
Browntown again.
Browntown it is. We are the clowns of Browntown. All right. Brad, you're up first. Do you have a quest for these guys?
I mean, you're dealing with the CR16. We touched on it earlier. These guys are not really here to negotiate. They're not here, so you're not dealing with any low-level encounters. My quest here is that there have been rumors that coming from the depths, there are riders of death who are ascending from the underworld. And your job is simply not even to confront these things. Your job is going to be to scout them out, see what is coming, see how much time there is to prepare, and see if there's any way to at least delay them a little bit to buy the town more time to prepare for the coming or to disperse and get out before these things arrive.
I mentioned the Sphinx earlier, and I've been thinking about a Sphinx in the back of my mind the whole time. And so I think your players are tasked by a Sphinx to go to an Ashen Rider and find out, why are you immune to thunder, you son of a bitch? This doesn't make any fucking sense. No,
I can cast Bolt of Ash, that's why.
If I can be honest, these guys are such and they're such a threat, and there's clearly more than one, right? Like there's a number of them that are living in the underworld. You guys are going to fight a couple of these guys and get their asses fucking handed to them. They're going to watch a couple of beloved NPCs fall to one of these. As they get higher powered, they're able to take a hit, and this necrotic stuff, while it's still scary, it's not necessarily going to be an auto kill because they're level 16, 17, 18. They've got magic items and all that shit, right? So one Ashen Rider might not be enough to terrify them, but now two, that's a tough fight. Well, and then they see the army of 100. My quest is close the gates to Nyx before the Ashen Riders break free. The army is on the move.
I like it. I like that. If I had to have a quest for these guys, or that pertains to these guys, it would revolve more so around one of the Archons. The other ones that we talked about, giving you the quest to find out what's causing trouble. They don't know that it's one of these guys. You don't know what it is. But when you actually go and you start to see it, and you're like, that thing looks awfully similar to something we've already seen, but not the same. And that thing is flipping scary. You maybe see from a distance what it's doing to a town, and then you're reporting back. And then guess what? It opens up a whole new quest line of, okay, now you need to do this. Now you need to do this. Maybe it is the, what was yours called again, Adam? The Triumvirate.
Yeah.
Maybe it is that thing. Once it finds out what is causing this, it needs to take action.
I like that. I like mixing these guys together too. Archon versus Archon can be a little fun. Any role-playing ideas, Brad?
I mean, you're going to have a really tough time negotiating with these guys, right? We discussed this. But that said, the role play of these is going to be almost like this wave of death that is coming, right? The role play may not even be with the Archon itself, but with the devastation that's left in its wake, right? Maybe your party's actually trying to chase these things down and figure out where they're going. And your role playing is with the victims, the people who survived, who managed to hide. What did they see? What did they hear? What were the calls out for cleansing that these things were calling out? What were they actually desiring? They probably would be shouting it from the rooftops as they were coming in to clear them out. You have been found wanting. You have been found to be not enough. We will cleanse this entire plane of existence and claim it for the underworld.
I like the idea of, it says in the lore that that terrified mortals are giving these offerings, but the Ashen Riders just don't give a shit, right?
Yeah,
like, there's no mercy here. So like
exactly, yeah.
You think about the players. The players are gonna like walk up to this guy and they're gonna look, or this girl, and they're gonna look her square in the eye and they're gonna say, "Why are you immune to thunder damage?" Because it doesn't make I have nothing to add.
Smite.
Brad, I agree with your thing. My one thing, again, is as far as role-playing goes, during combat, there's got to be things when they're reducing things to ash, when they are casting spells, banishing people, casting the bolt of ash. There needs to be catchphrases. There needs to be things that
hackles would even be a good use.
Yeah,
like things are gonna be laughing at the devastation. This is gonna be a game to them.
It literally says they delight in reducing the paragons of the mortal world to ash. So it's not just the mortals; it's the paragons. They want to topple statues. They want to burn down temples.
Absolutely.
Right? So if there is a magical artifact, they want to destroy it. They want to take away hope.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
are no
yeah.
prisoners. There are no spoils of war. Everything is just turned to ash.
I also think though that they're going to they're going to step up. Like their flying lion, which is what the art is, right? It's
Yeah.
but like they're going to fly in. So like the town square land, everybody's going to come out and fall to their knees. All of these mortals that can't do anything, and like sit there and start like chanting and praying. And the Ashen Rider will completely freaking ignore them and walk into the temple, and you will hear the sounds of slaughter and screaming. And the Ashen Rider will walk out as blood drips from their gauntlets, and they sheathe their blade, get back on, and fly away again. Right, ignoring the mortals. Like I think that the standard mortals are not important enough. They're here to fuck
enough.
shit up. Right, so
No, I look at these guys as they delight in the suffering.
but they're not chaotic. Right.
No, they're not chaotic, no. But I do see them in a sense of they are not opposed to like torture if it is going to be for a lawful purpose, if it is deserving in their eyes what they believe to be lawful, and they will torture people to make an example, and they will continue to do so.
Yeah, they're going to leave people strung up as a message, definitely, right?
Exactly.
But not
And that's
alive,
my-
I don't think. I don't think they're going to leave them alive. If they torture, it will end in their death. Not for mercy, just for completion.
No, yeah, eventually they will die. They will not leave them living, but they will torture them until death, so that they learn going into the afterlife what that you should not exist. We should not have fallen in the first place. You are so weak.
Brad, do you have anything for exploration and clues?
I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but you know what? Just glass, right? We talked about the scorching power turning everything to ash. If there's sand, right? If they're in a desert, there should be like black glass left behind.
It's so weird that there's no lightning or fire with the Ashen Rider.
It is true. Yes, it's very true. I mean, it's necrotic damage, right? So everything is wasted away.
I feel like the theme of this is that they're sucking the moisture out and leaving merely carbon behind.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is a cold burn more than like a hot burn, right? So my clue here, I'm just going to jump onto the idea that you had about like leaving people behind. You're going to have this message. You think about the dead tree that looks like it's been burned, but there's no sign of ignition. You can't tell what lit it on fire. It's just ashen, and hanging from it are completely pristine chains, and there is clearly just the base carbon husk of a body hanging by its ankles as a warning, right? And a strong breeze comes by, and half of the tree and the body just disintegrate into the wind, leaving the chains rattling.
And then later on, it's just dust.
Yeah, and then later on, you keep finding these chains hanging in places, and there's just like every footstep that you take is in like the ground looks white, and every footstep you take leaves behind a black footstep in the white ash, right? My idea here with them is that like if they have a lair, they're back in the underworld. When you see where these guys have laid waste, the ash has got to be on everything. Everything you touch is covered in it. But I like the idea of these like pristine chains, because it wasn't fire, it wasn't lightning, it wasn't anything like that. There are all of these manacles hanging from the ceiling, and they're all closed and locked, but there's no bodies in them. There were, but not anymore.
I really like the idea. I'm going to play on that a little bit with those chains. The chains, I would almost say, are like magically imbued to like stay clean, like they don't rust.
Yeah,
So that it is
stainless steel. Yeah,
yeah. There you go. Yeah, that's how stainless steel makes its way to D&D. No,
I just love the idea of the players going like, "Where are the bodies?" and like an NPC turning and being like, "We're breathing them."
No, absolutely. I love that idea of, or they come into town and they kick up a bit of dust, and to them it's just dust, but there's no dust around the city at all. And then after a little while in the city, they realize the dust they're kicking up and they're breathing in is essentially the remains of the people of the city.
Brad, do you have any combat tactics for these guys?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They do have command and compelled duel. We talked earlier about how the Archons of Triumvirate are going to use them as a defense mechanism or to protect the innocent. Here it's the exact opposite, right?
Yeah.
We're commanding. It's like Scorpion, get over here, and then the compelled duel is simply because I want to murder you and I want you to get here quicker so I can kill you faster. These guys, I think, would make use of the mount bonus action to teleport onto the back of their mount, not so much to escape, but they would use it to, I'm going to deal with this guy. You, Lioness, go over there, put your jaws into this guy, and when I'm done with him, I'm going to come over to you and finish him off. And I'm just going to use you to help me get around the battlefield faster, because you can move while I'm fighting, and then I'm going to come to you and do it all again.
Yeah, I really feel like the bond here is one of like submission
Yes.
as opposed to like
absolutely.
a proper pet or ally for the other Archons.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because keep in mind the others are very much lawful, neutral, lawful good. If these things are evil aligned, a Pegasus, absolutely no. It has to be one of these mounts that we saw earlier in Theros that is unaligned, that almost a manifestation of their will.
Yeah, the art shows them with the lioness, right? And I think it's a good fit. In fact, the art, this is probably my favorite art of the three.
So for combat, for me, all right, I'm coming back to the Damage Immunity Thunder again. And the thing that I like about it, it's like it was half baked into this and then they gave up because of the aura of silence. Now, you'll notice that it's not the silence spell. It is not that there's an aura of, like an actual aura of silence. It's just that some things can't speak and they are deafened if they fail, right? That's it. It's not like the footsteps aren't still echoing. As if you are 35 feet away, you can still hear the Ashen Rider talk, right?
Yeah.
Which means thunder damage would still affect it because in theory, in silence, in the proper silence spell, I always play it like thunder damage doesn't have any effect because silence.
That makes sense,
right?
Yeah.
So for me, I'm gonna take the Ashen Blade and I'm gonna get rid of that radiant damage. I'm gonna make it thunder damage.
Yep.
Guess what? No, it makes sense.
Yeah, it ties it all together. And honestly, every time that it hits with the Ashen Blade, there's going to be a boom sound, and ash will rain down from whatever is already corpseified, right? Whatever the ash is. And I think that for my bolt of ash, like honestly, combat is I fly around and I shoot with the bolt of ash. Come fucking get me, right? Like that's what this is. But like if I'm gonna mix it up, if I'm in a smaller, tighter space or whatnot, the bolt of ash, the reduced to ash, where I'm like fucking people up with necrotic damage. Normally for me, the flavor of necrotic damage is a withering feeling, like the life and strength disappear from your muscles. You get thirsty and it's like sucking the moisture out of you. For this, it just feels like you rub your arm and the top 3 layers of skin just flake away, right?
Yeah.
This is
I'd say that's an accurate depiction.
This is a nastier, more brutal, dry kind of just flaking. Mr. Stark. Right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's the edge.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be so painful when you actually kill a player with this, for sure.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Or a valued NPC.
Yeah. Tyler, do you have any combat for these guys?
Yeah, I do. Again, I love the idea of reduced to ash. I am going to take out NPCs with this guy. My riders are going to realize that they are not invincible. But one, I really enjoy that aura of silence.
Yeah.
Because how it's going to work is that mount is going to fly in without the rider on it. And he's going to fly into the spellcasters because the Ashen Rider knows. He's smart. He's very smart. At 15 intelligence, is smart enough to know. And so the mount is going to make its way there. And as soon as it's within range, it's going to teleport on top of it. And guess what? That aura of silence suddenly affects it affects your bards, your wizards, your sorcerers, your warlocks. Heck, I would even say if you're barbarian, he channels his rage by yelling. Guess what? He ain't gonna be raging because he can't. He's not able to rage because he can't yell to get the rage out. That's how I would play it as a DM. That's just more of a side fun way of thinking of it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
But this idea of it's forcing them to make that immunity, that DC wisdom saving throw. Now, if they make it, they're immune to it for 24 hours. I don't know if I like that, but rules was written.
I always undo that. I always undo the immune for 24 hours. I may give at best I'll give you immune for 1d4 rounds.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I do as well. Just the idea of it gives the more fear aspect to it. It gives more relevance. But that, and then while this person is there, then they are going to use that ashen blade because that thing is deadly up close, and then reducing to ash the end of it. And then guess what? They're going to send the mount away and then bamf out of it.
Yeah. No, I've got one final thought about these guys, and it's the fact that we finally have an evil celestial. Now, this works just fine in Theros, but how do you apply this to the Forgotten Realms or anything that has planes that are based on the idea of alignment? Because your celestials tend to come from the good aligned planes. So how do you handle this? Well, this is your fallen angel.
Yeah, exactly.
And while I would not put these creatures in the 9 hells or the abyss, because those are like very specifically for devils and demons, we do have 3 others. Like Hades, right? And there are others. We did a whole episode in the lower planes. So find one that fits well for you. But I think because of the thunder damage, I want to put these guys in Pandemonium in the Forgotten Realms. Because Pandemonium
absolutely
has those howling winds, right? So you don't just turn someone to ash. You turn to ash and they blow away immediately. Right? Just gone down the tunnel. Right. So that's where I would throw these guys. They've been corrupted, they're fallen angels, and they have found a home in Pandemonium. So that gives them the thunder as well as a tie to the, I think the ash is their corrupted radiant damage, right? So
I could almost also see this as they make the way to Pandemonium after trying to battle it out in the 9 hells.
Yeah, I mean
maybe they followed other angels there to battle against it.
That was what happened to Zariel, right? Azariel came down and was tempted by Asmodeus to hey, if you flip, you will have more power, you'll do more good. And so she did. There's no reason why a couple of Ashen Riders wouldn't go with her. And again, that ties you. I would get rid of all of the thunder and radiant and make it all fire then. Right? Like I'm gonna tie all that shit to Avernus. So like there's some flavors and options here. You got to do a little bit of reskinning and a little bit of thinking about how to apply these guys in the Forgotten Realms.
I mean, clearly they took the name and then reskinned it anyways. It's already a reskin. Like you called it Ashen Rider, but gave it nothing really ashen.
Yeah, like
to ash.
I mean, I guess dust to dust and ashes to ashes is the only, like, necrotic dust to dust is about as close as you get to ashes.
Yeah, there really ought to be some sort of fire. I feel like ashen is more about the color that they are, right? So
yeah, the art shows them as being this white and golden. They're wearing all white with golden glittering armor.
Yeah,
right. This is white ash, not black ash. Not soot. This is ash, not soot.
All right. So before we wrap this episode up, let's cut to our last ad break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram or on our subreddit at r/itsAmimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes, and comments. Engagement like that helps us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
So guys, I want to talk about really quickly about final thoughts and inspirations here. These guys are meant as set pieces. Don't think of them purely as combat. Think of the angels that we've talked about today as how can I use them for exploration and for the social pillars. Not everything has to be about the combat pillar, especially when it comes to these guys. And if you're low levels, even at high levels, how can I use these in a campaign to further advance the story and to give the ability for my players to use that exploration, to use the social, because these are set pieces that can be put in there. So I really want to press that on there because we don't have that enough. And I want people to feel as if they can play D&D not just as a combat simulator, but this idea of expanding the world.
And you don't get anything that's quite as unique as what a Celestial brings to the table. There's really nothing else that fills that niche. Like you can make a deal with Fae, Fiend, or Hag, right? And you're gonna get a funky deal out of it. It'll be flavored a little differently, but you're not really getting anything. Maybe maybe if you make a high-powered devil neutral, right? Because they're lawful, right? Like maybe, but even
Paladin Temple might be your other option.
yeah, right. But Celestials do give us a unique opportunity here, and so I agree with you 100%, Tyler.
There's nothing for me to add. Use these guys. Yeah, don't focus solely on combat. Their combat abilities is great, but you're using them as sidekicks or as a big evil point.
Exactly.
So that's all for this discussion on Celestial. Make sure that you subscribe and follow and check back regularly to see what inspirations and insights we'll have for you in the future.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, www.itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits. And don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
Okay, so this should come out before I get to the point in the game, but in my homebrew campaign, I was also running at the same time Curse of Strahd with Mieka, and the two of them were like, every time she'd come into town, they would jump into Barovia, or she would come into the homebrew campaign. They were like teleporting back and forth and stuff. But one of the times that they were doing that, they were heading up, for those listeners who are familiar with Curse of Strahd, they were heading up to the top of Mount Baratok. And I had a random encounter halfway up that there was an abandoned Vistani encampment there. And so as they were hunting around and stuff, I wanted to give them a kind of a moment of like, oh God, something's in the dark, without it actually being a fight. And it turned out that it was just an elephant tied to a tree that they didn't see initially in the shadows, and it stepped out. Well, Dan, the Furbolg Bard, who is pretty much neutral good, wanted to steal the elephant and have a pet elephant. And I'm like, how are you going to get this thing up the sheer like cliff face in front of you? It's like, we'll figure it out. It'll be fine. I can lift and drag, my twice my weight and all. And I'm like, Dan, how are you going to get this elephant? So one of our players, Charlie, that told Dan, leave the elephant in character, in game, leave the elephant. I will get you an elephant. And then within about 8 sessions, Charlie's character Fang died. No elephant to be found. But one of the things about Dan and Charlie's is Charlie was like his adopted brother. So they had this like familial thing where everybody in the I promise this is going to circle back to Celestials here in a second. Everybody in their family has what's called a soul light, which is a little light that follows them around and indicates how good or how corrupted their soul is, how bright or happy they are, how sad. Dan's didn't make it through a portal into this world, but Charlie's did. And Charlie is this deep, dark rogue with a little soul light falling around. And it's just a little mote, just a little speck of light that you got to kind of pay attention to in order to see it. But once you see it, you're hyper aware of it. Like it's this floating little speck of light. And it would juxtapose the darkness to the rogue. Well, the rogue died. Well, we've recently discovered that the soul light is still following Dan's character around. So Charlie's soul light, which means that Charlie's soul is still bound to him somehow. Charlie's soul has unfinished business. And what he's going to do is summon a celestial elephant for Dan's character. But the only celestial elephant we have so far is a Hollyphant, which is by far the most annoying piece of shit. And this Hollyphant is going to pop up like a familiar that won't go away. And it's going to be, hi, Dan, how are you? And it's going to be like a cartoon, like a children's host of some like children's show. It's going to be
that's so beautiful
and stupid. And Dan is going to love to hate it. In the last campaign, his familiar hated him, and he loved his familiar. This time, his familiar's going to love him, and he's going to
hate him. That's awesome.
I'm really excited about this.
What was that Pixar movie about feelings with the pink elephant?
Inside
that died?
Out.
Yeah, that's
Inside Out. Yeah,
that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, I would really. The thing that's stopping me right now is I need to find the perfect name. It's got to be like Ollie the Hollyphant or something. Not exactly that, but it's got to be something ridiculously obnoxious. And it's always going to be whatever the name is plus the Hollyphant. And every time it enters a room, it will introduce itself. So, like, it's got to be this punchy, memorable name over and over. So I'm working on that. By the time this episode comes out, Dan should be thoroughly infuriated with this creature.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm
So you'll have to report back when this happens.
yeah, I'm sure you guys will see it in the Patreon Discord. He's
I
ranting,
don't doubt it.
raging.
If that doesn't get people in the Patreon, I don't know what will.
Why are you still here? Leave already.